I wanted to just share this evening on just, again, these are just times where we can be in the Word for a short opportunity to hear some foundational truths of the gospel. And one of those real foundational truths, not a truth in itself, but a sense that we need to know what is spiritual leadership in the church. Because today, brothers and sisters, more than ever before, more than ever before, we need to know those that are leading us in the church, those that are making the spiritual decisions in the church, the eldership in the church, or in any other church. Doesn't have to be this church, but the people in the church that are leading the people of God. It's important that we know what spiritual leadership is. I'm not talking about charisma. I'm not talking about those that can preach a wonderful sermon. And these are great. There's nothing wrong with these. We know of men of God in this church or in others that preach with the power of God, that preach a good sermon, and it carries life. It carries the anointing of God. So it's not about good sermons or not good sermons, but it's about spiritual leadership. It's not natural. It's not something that's based on man's understanding or man's approval or man's choice, but it's God's choice. That's the difference. When we look at David and we look at how he was chosen by God, there was 7 other brothers that were better looking than him, although it says David was a handsome young man, but there were 7 bigger sons that could have done the job most easily in the natural. And yet God says to Samuel, "Do you have another son?" And he says, "Yes, but he's out in the fields. He's out looking after the sheep." And he brings him in and he says, "This is the choice of God." I tell you, it's humbling. It's humbling to know the choice of God. And so I wanted to open in John chapter 10 this evening. Lucky I'm shaking so much. Oh, I can hardly drink this water bottle. All right. John chapter 10 says, "I am the good shepherd." And we're going to go from verse 1, and it says, "Most assuredly I say to you, that he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs up some other way, the same is a thief and a robber." Well, the first thing we need to understand, brothers and sisters, is that the most important thing about a true shepherd or true leader in the church is that they come through the door. They don't come through the window. They don't come through the chimney. They don't come through a side door, but they come confidently through the door. Through the door. And Jesus in verse 9 says later, because we want to, well, what is the door? Yes, they can walk through the door. It doesn't make somebody a true leader in the Spirit. But Jesus says in verse 9, Jesus says, "I am the door. I am the door." And so the first thing, brothers and sisters, we need to know is that a true shepherd comes through Jesus Christ. He doesn't come through another way. And you see, it's important to know that, brothers and sisters, because there are many leaders today, and I want you to understand the heart of what's happening here. But there are many leaders today behind pulpits or leading God's people that have a great Facebook following, that have a wonderful Instagram account, and I want you to continue, just hear me out here. They have got great fame. They are great speakers. They've got great degrees. They've studied. They are popular. Many people watch their sermons. Many people listen to their sermons. They've got a great, great body of listeners. And you see, all of this is okay. It's okay. But if the same person does not come through Jesus Christ, it's of absolutely no value in the church. And I want you to understand that, brothers and sisters, because today, more than ever, we know, it's been said many times from this pulpit, there is a click away and you can come up and find 1,000 sermons from a different person, all of who's got a great following. Sometimes you look down at the following, you say, geez, have you ever seen it, like 4K clicks? 4K, it means 4,000. You understand? It's not 4 clicks. It's 4K. 4,000 clicks. Sometimes you get a 1.1 M. Understand the M? The M is 1 million views. If you look at some of my videos or others, you get maybe 4 clicks. It's wonderful. Great confidence builder. But anyway, you see, our confidence and the confidence of a leader in the Spirit, and please, I'm not, is that they don't lead the church based on popularity. They don't lead God's people based on fame. And you can have a great degree. You can have a wonderful degree in Bible theology. But the main importance, like we said, is we must come, or leadership must come through Jesus Christ. And what does this mean? It means that a true leader in the Spirit is leaning on Christ. They're not leaning on their own ability. They're not leaning on their knowledge. They're not leaning on degrees. They're not leaning on fame. And sometimes I ask myself, well, if we were to remove all of these things, if we were to remove all the followers, if we were to remove all the advertising, all the fame, all this type of thing, well, what would be left? What would be left? Would we still have a leader that leads God's people spiritually? Would we still have a leader that's willing to follow Jesus at the cost of everything? Because that is a true leader in the Spirit. They don't come, when you come through the window, goodness me, when you come through a window, it's dodgy. You know when a guy's coming through the window. I mean, when you come to church here, you don't see people climbing through the windows. You see people coming through the door. And it's the same with a true leader. If we look at chapter 10, verse 3, we stay in here. It says, "To him the doorkeeper opens, and the sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name, and he leads them out. And when he brings out his own sheep, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice." You see, one of the things about true leadership and spiritual leadership is that there is a relationship that a true shepherd has with the people of God. There's a true relationship that a shepherd in the Spirit has with the people of God. It's not just an amount of people in the church, but a true relationship that this person has with the sheep. And it doesn't mean, because we hear he knows everyone by name. Now, it doesn't mean, obviously, you know every single person by name, but you care for every single person just as if you knew them by name. That's the difference. You care for every person in the church as if you knew them by name. And that is also a great distinguisher between a false shepherd in the church and a spiritual leader in the church. Is this somebody that knows me? Is this somebody that cares for me? Is this somebody that when I'm faced with life's decisions, is this somebody that's going to take time to spend with me and to invest in me because they themselves have walked something real with Jesus? Or is this somebody that's just kind of, he's more interested in numbers in his church? Some of you maybe have been part of that. The irony of it, brothers and sisters, and you see, it's not about the size of a church, but it's about the heart of leadership in the church. Because you can have hundreds of thousands of followers in a wonderful church. In fact, I was born again in a megachurch. Can you believe it? I was born again in a megachurch. So what you see here today is a product of a megachurch. You understand? So I want you to understand, I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I'm saying God can build anyone in any place at any time. He can build in a megachurch, he can build in a small church, he can build in a home group, he can build wherever he chooses to build. But when I start to walk with Jesus, I must know who I'm following. I must know the caliber of the people that I'm following in the church. That's important. Salvation is one thing. But leading a Christian life where my life is being built in the Spirit, where my life is being changed, where I'm being challenged that I can't keep sin in my life, where I'm being challenged in relationship. That's important, brothers and sisters. It's important because I can't just get that from anyone. You know, if we look in Paul's example, 2 Corinthians chapter 14, I want to go there quickly. Two Corinthians chapter 14. Isn't there? Huh? False doctrine, guys, you see. Here we go. I told you guys, we must be careful. Never know what's going to happen. Okay. Let me find it here. Sorry, 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 14. I want you to see Paul's heart here as a leader in the church. In verse 14 of chapter 12. And he says there, "Now for the third time, brethren, I am ready to come to you, and I will not be burdensome to you." And why won't he be burdensome to the people of God? He says, "Because I do not seek yours, but you." You see, spiritual leadership in the church is not in the church to get things from the people of God. He's not there to gain anything from the people of God. He's not there to gain anything. You know, there's a desire in a true spiritual leader to see the sheep in the flock, to see the people of God in the church, to see them well in the Spirit, and to see them walking in the life of Christ. And this is the only motivating factor for a spiritual leader in the church. It's not to line his pockets. It's not to gain something naturally from the people of God. But it's to see the people of God well in the Spirit and having victory over the flesh. Victory over sin. Victory in their life. And obviously we all go through times of difficulty. Things that are difficult in life, of course. We can't hide from the fact that life is tough at times, of course. Who hasn't had a tough week or day? We know that. But the only motivating factor for a spiritual leader in the church is to see the people of God growing in the Spirit and having victory over the flesh. I tell you, that is so important in the church today. And we must know, brothers and sisters, the people that are leading us, the people that are directing us, giving their lives for us, we must understand and see what is the motivating factor behind what I'm hearing. What is the motivating factor that I'm feeling? If we look in verse 4 of John chapter 10, it says that when the true shepherd brings out his own sheep, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. And I wanted to share a little story that I looked at today. It was a very sweet story, but has a lot of meaning in it. And I'll read a little bit of it here. It says, during World War I in 1914, there were some soldiers that tried to steal a flock of sheep from a hillside in Jerusalem. And the shepherd, or the sleeping shepherd, awoke. Okay, maybe he shouldn't have been asleep. But anyway, he was sleeping. And he awoke to find his flock being driven off by these thieves, taking these sheep. And he couldn't recapture them by force, because by that stage, obviously the thieves had taken the sheep very far, and he couldn't recapture them by force. And so he called out to this flock with his distinctive call that he always called the sheep by. He had obviously a distinctive call that they knew, or he hoped they knew. And the sheep listened, and they returned to their rightful owner. And it didn't matter what these soldiers did. It didn't matter what these soldiers did that were trying to steal the sheep. They could not stop the sheep from returning to the shepherd's voice. And you see, for me, it's important for you and I to know that we're not just following a crowd when we come to church. We're not just following a crowd. We are following because we know the voice of the shepherd. You know, I'm sure there were some sheep there. I don't know. Maybe some of the sheep were not very, very clever sheep. You understand? And maybe they just followed the rest of the sheep and kind of got there because that sheep was doing it. But you see, brothers and sisters, I can follow a crowd for so long. I can follow a crowd for so long until life meets me at my doorway. And then I have to give an account for what God is doing in my life. You see, if I follow people around, if I follow Kelly, I'm sure I'll be led perfectly well. If I follow Christy, perfectly well. If I follow someone in the church, it's wonderful. But then I'm following their convictions. You see, and if I'm following a person's convictions and they're not my own convictions, it's only going to get me as far as that person. And Jesus doesn't want to take you and I by following somebody in the church. Jesus wants to take you and I by following his voice. If Jesus is asking me to do this, it doesn't mean he's asking Michaela to do it. If Jesus is asking Rod to do something, then Rod must follow the conviction of his heart because he's heard from the shepherd's voice. But I cannot follow Rod in the natural. I can't follow Kelly in the natural. I must follow God according to the conviction of my heart. That is something I must be very aware of, brothers and sisters. Because for sure it's about a shepherd. But it's also about the sheep. It's also about the people in the church. You know, the deception, brothers and sisters, is that I'm not sure how many people in church today don't know the voice of a true shepherd. And they are swept up by the lies, the craftiness, the cunningness of good words, of good preaching, of good sermons. And I've laid that foundation. It's not about the good sermons and good, but are swept up by leadership in the church that has got no desire to see the people of God well in the spirit. And yet they are following leadership in the church because they are seeing everybody else follow that. That's why they're following it. I mean, if I was to ask you, brothers and sisters, how many of us have been challenged on this very issue in our lives? I have. I'll be honest. I've followed a movement before. I've followed crowds before. I have. You know, there was a movement, and there was a movement of, and I realized looking back, it wasn't actually a movement. It was people following the convictions of their heart. But you know, when we were in Bible school in 2007, it just took one person. It took one person to get married out of all of us, and now we all got in the marriage boat. You understand? Everyone now was, geez, He's married. I mean, he's a terrible looking guy. He's been married. Now, surely God's got a plan for me. And it must be next week. Because there's a movement now going on. And little did I know that when it came to my life, it was one of the greatest areas where I needed to be absolutely convinced that the woman I was marrying was the plan of God for my life. Let me just encourage us, brothers and sisters. If we are following a crowd or a movement, we are going to miss out on the plan of God for our lives. And that's important. That's super important. Because I want what God wants for my life. I don't want what God has for Austin. But it's the truth. I don't want what the Lord has for Ethan. I don't want that. As good as it may seem for that person, there is no grace or strength for me to follow the footsteps of another person's call. There's no grace for that. You know, that's why it's so deceptive to look at people and to wish you had what they had. Have you ever gone through that? Sometimes I've thought, jeepers, that person's life is so easy. And then you just sit down for 2 seconds and think, goodness me, I never want to be that person. We don't see, brothers and sisters, the road that people walk. And we can so easily want to trade my plan for God's plan because it looks good on the outside. And we fail to see the road that brother and sister is walking with Jesus. So we know that a sheep will not follow a stranger. And God knows that those that trust Him. This is what separates the sheep. Is because the sheep know the shepherd's voice. And you know, I just had to write here, I said, you know, the reason that there are many sheep today that don't know the shepherd's voice is because they themselves have not come through the door. You see, I want you to hear the spirit of what I'm sharing this evening, because they themselves have not come through the door. They've also come through the window or the back door or down wherever it may be. And Jesus is saying to be a true sheep in His fold. If we go on to if we go on to, where is it? If we go on to verse 8 and we go down through verse 9, it says, of John chapter 10, it says, all who ever came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved, and will go in and out and find pasture. Now that's a very interesting little statement that Jesus throws in there. He says, I am the door, and if anyone enters by me, he will be saved. In other words, the most important thing and reason for coming through the door of Jesus Christ is because when I come through Jesus Christ, I meet Jesus and I am saved. I am born again. I'm born again. If I come through the window, if I'm coming into church because everyone else is going to church, I must understand that I'm going to be there for so long, but have no assurance that I've come through Christ and that I'm a born again Christian. And my brothers and sisters, I'm telling you, I don't know how many people may be sitting in churches today and are not born again. I know it sounds harsh, but it may just as well be the case. Because when you look at the sheep that follow a spiritual leader in the church, you will see that the sheep bear the same mark as the true shepherd. They bear the same mark. If I have a leadership in my church or in your church or wherever it is that is following Jesus, that is allowing God to do a work in their lives, that is allowing God to break them and to mold them, a shepherd himself that has come through the door, the sheep in the church or the people in the church will resemble that. Not perfectly. I'm not saying there's no one perfect. But you will find in the church that there's a desire in 90% or 85% of the people that carries the mark of the shepherd. You know, sometimes, and I want to just... And that's why it says the thief comes through another way. Comes through another way. And you know, the sad reality, brothers and sisters, is that when the thief comes through another way, so does his sheep. You understand? I don't know. You know, we've got sheep and goats. I'm not going to necessarily go down that. But and you see, often we meet Christians, and please hear me out, brothers and sisters. We can meet Christians, and it's characterized by a real shallowness. When you meet certain Christians, there's a shallowness. There's a self-seeking. When you speak with these brothers and sisters, they only ever see God as someone that's out to bless them. Yes, God is there to bless us. Amen. But you never feel from the heart of that Christian that there's an awareness that God also needs to do a deep work in their lives. It's just about blessing. It's just about getting what they can from God. And then that's the thing. Because that shepherd that comes through the window is just about getting as much as he can from the sheep. So when a shepherd like that preaches to the church, you get Christians that are all just about getting. Because they have a shepherd that's just out for getting. Remember what Paul said, I did not come to seek you, but I did not come to seek yours, but I came to seek you. I came to seek the wellness of your life. I didn't come to you to get everything I could get from you or anything I could get, but I came to lay down my life for the sheep, that they may have life. But there's a spirit in churches today, brothers and sisters. The reality is, leadership in the church that is coming through all sorts of different ways and bearing and giving birth to Christians that carry the same shallowness and self-seeking and godlessness in their lives. That's why, brothers and sisters, if we look at verse 12, I wanted to just read here as well. You know, I thank the Lord because I believe there are many, many sincere Christians, sincere, godly, Jesus-loving, born-again Christians that are in churches today where they're not hearing a sound gospel or a sound doctrine. And you know the beauty of that, brothers and sisters, is that God knows those that trust Him. God knows those that want to walk a sincere relationship with Him. And He has His ways. He has His ways of arranging for these people to be in a place where they can be fed the right food. That's the beauty. That's the goodness of God. There are many sincere Christians out there, I believe with all my heart, many sincere Christians that love Jesus, but are sitting in the wrong place today. But we can trust God, as we can trust the Lord, that these people, God has a way, I'm telling you, God has a way of bringing these people out of those chairs and putting them into the right chairs, where they are fed good food by spiritual shepherds in the church that want the life of Christ to become evident in their lives. That's all they want. In verse 12 it says, a hireling or a hired person or a hired man. He who is not the shepherd, one who does not own the sheep, but he sees the wolf coming, and when he sees the wolf coming, he leaves the sheep and flees. And the wolf catches the sheep and scatters the sheep. You know, in the Old Testament, one of the roles of the prophets, if you look in Ezekiel specifically, you'll see that the prophets acted as a watchman for the people of God. They were there and they used to sit and watch at the gates of the cities. And they used to watch for natural people trying to get in, people trying to get into the doors and to wreak havoc in the cities. And the role of these people was to act as natural watchmen. And if they saw people coming, they would warn them. They would say, there's an army coming, be careful, close the doors. There's something coming into this place that is not right. There's something coming into this place that wants to destroy your life. That's what his role was. That was the function of a prophet in the church. And Jesus or God says to these prophets, if you do not warn the people of God that there's somebody entering by the gate, their blood will be on your hands. Their blood will be on your hands as a prophet. But if you do warn the people of God, and in that they still choose to go their own way, then the blood will be on their own hands, because you took your place and you warned the people that danger was coming. And you see, today there's a different function for a spiritual shepherd in the church. Is that they themselves, in the spirit, not necessarily natural, it's not natural, brothers and sisters, but in the spirit, a true shepherd of God is there to watch out for false doctrines in the church. Is there to watch the doctrines and the messages that are coming into the church, and to warn the sheep. To warn the sheep that there is deception. To warn the sheep to be careful. To warn the sheep not to open their ears to false gospels in the church. That's why, brothers and sisters, I tell you, when I think of sound doctrine in the church, I thank the Lord for the security that you and I have. I tell you, I thank the Lord for the security that you and I have in the church. Because I know that I have leadership in the church. I know it's not perfect. I know, brothers and sisters, just like any one of us. But you will never ever see a gospel or doctrine from this pulpit that comes to damage God's people. Never. By the grace of God. Because there are shepherds and spiritual leadership in the church that are watching out and watching those doors and watching the windows to see the winds and whatever may be coming into the church. But the sad thing, brothers and sisters, is that there are shepherds out there today that have got no problem who preaches behind the pulpit. No problem. Anyone can come through the doors. Any person, just as long as they believe it's going to be hype the people up or do whatever for the people of God, then they are welcome to come into the doors. And I have to ask myself, if these shepherds are not warning the people of God and guarding them against false doctrines in the church, I have to ask myself, what judgment is going to follow these people? It's a serious situation, brothers and sisters. And to end, brothers and sisters, I really want you, at the end of the day, I want you to know the heart of what is being shared with us tonight. I really want you to know the heart. There are incredible men of God today. And we must never ever go down the road that we have it all and that there's nothing else. You must be very careful, brothers and sisters. There are many churches and men of God out there today that are preaching sound doctrine, that are feeding the sheep with sound doctrine, that are watching the sheep grow, that are giving their lives for the sheep. And we can't have a mentality here of exclusivity, like we have it all. But one thing we must be on guard against, brothers and sisters, is doctrines that are not there doing that. And I want to warn us, brothers and sisters, I really want to warn us, brothers and sisters, that when we click on YouTube or wherever it may be, We must be careful, brothers and sisters, what we allow our eyes and ears to see and hear. Because you see, a false doctrine doesn't necessarily sound terrible. It doesn't necessarily sound terrible. It doesn't come with horns and everything like that. It doesn't come like that. It comes very sneakily with great words and great ability and all these types of things, smoke and whatever it might be. But I must ask myself, is this gospel building my life? Is it taking me to the cross? Is it dealing with my flesh? Is it dealing with the attitudes in my heart? Or is it just building me emotionally? It's the same with music. You know, today when I'm in the car, whatever, we used to share a car, but now somebody has allowed us to use a vehicle. Wonderful thing. You know, sometimes you put music on, and I tell you, it just gives you goosebumps. Goodness me, I mean, it's a wonderful song, wonderful music. And sometimes I just have to ask myself, Clint, when you're listening to this song, is it bringing you to worship Jesus? Or is it just bringing you to an emotional state in your mind? You know, and many times it's been difficult, but I'll be honest with you, it's been difficult, but I've actually had to turn it off. It's been tough, I'll be honest. I'm not saying like, whoa, wonderful, let's turn it off. But I have to come to a place where I say, Lord, this is not building me to worship you. This is not bringing me to worship you. This is just pumping me up in the flesh. And when I turn it off, I realize, hey, it's like, when you turn it off, you realize, geez, where have I been for the last 10 minutes? I've been in some kind of imaginary world where I'm walking through rose fields and thinking of wonderful things. And then I turn it off and I realize, goodness me, that's not life. That's not real life. But music in the spirit, it brings you not to necessarily walk through rose fields and things, but it brings you to worship Jesus. It brings you to see your need of God, to worship Jesus. And it's the same. It's the same with false doctrines, brothers and sisters. They can make us feel good. They can promise that we can walk through beautiful fields. They can promise us great things. They can give us everything our ears want. But at the end of the day, they leave us empty. They leave you and I empty. Because there's no life to be found outside of true doctrine. There's no life, brothers and sisters. There's no life to be found in those things. And I always say that real life doesn't have a soundtrack. Have you ever watched a movie with those kind of, what they're called? It's like a montage. A montage. Beautiful images with music in the background. Goodness me. Just looks amazing. But then you take the music away. And it's boring. It's boring. And brothers and sisters, that's false doctrine. If you take the music and the lights and all this stuff away, it's deception and it brings no life to anybody. It brings no life. And I want to encourage us tonight, brothers and sisters. I really do, as I encourage myself. Make sure that when you're on your own or wherever you may be, that you're listening to things that are edifying you in the Spirit, that are building your life in the Spirit and are not just smoke machines and lights and all sorts of things. Smoke machines and lights can be okay. I'm not saying you can't have a smoke machine at your house. If you want to have a smoke machine, lights, you are welcome to do that, please, by all means. But I'm saying when that becomes the focus in a church and all you have is smoke machine and lights, then we've got to be very, very careful, brothers and sisters. We have to be very careful. Because in the days to come, brothers and sisters, it's not going to be smoke and lights that build our lives. I'm telling you, we are facing days today. We can share here, we know there are real situations here today. It's not going to be screens and lights and smoke that saves you and me. It's going to be real sound doctrine that's building my life, that's bringing me to a place where I have a real Jesus that I can cry out to and say, Lord, I need you. That's a real relationship, brothers and sisters. So it's important, and I really wanted to share that with you tonight, brothers and sisters, and I pray you catch the spirit behind what is being shared, not the person.